I hate The Amazing Spider-Man. From the first time I saw it in theaters, I've thought that it's boring, bland, and incredibly forgettable. However, after rewatching the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, I still wanted to give it another chance. So, has my opinion on it? No, it didn't change. I still hate this movie. So buckle your seatbelts, feed your pets, and hug your children, because this is why The Amazing Spider-Man is amazingly bad. Now, I don't hate everything about this movie. In fact, the whole first chunk of the film is totally fine, and does a solid job of establishing this version of Peter and making him easy to root for. See, where Raimi's Spider-Man was a bullied kid, this Peter is the kid who tries to stop bullies. Of course, that whole underdog angle was what made it easy to care about this version of Peter, but The Amazing Spider-Man offers a good enough reason to care about this Peter's struggles. He was abandoned by his parents, and despite his great relationship with his aunt and uncle, it's something that eats at him. Then there's Uncle Ben and Aunt May, who are good here too. They have some nice banter, and they clearly care about Peter a lot. They feel like a pretty believable family group that needs each other. I even enjoy how this movie handles Peter's discovery of his superpowers, with how he accidentally beats up these people on the train in an incredibly goofy moment. It's fun and silly, and I'm down for that. Meanwhile, when he wakes up and can't seem to get through his morning routine without destroying the house, it's not only funny, but it's also a good way of showing that his life has permanently changed, and how freaky it would be to suddenly have these abilities. All this is to say that, yes, this Peter is definitely different from the one I and many others were first acquainted with, but there's nothing inherently wrong with that. There's plenty of room for different interpretations of this character, and I quite like many of the early scenes here. But then, with one moment, the whole movie starts to fall apart. See, at this point, Peter has started helping Dr. Connors with his research. However, this leads to Peter making an innocent mistake. He forgets to pick up his aunt from work, even though he promised Ben that he would. Ben does not like this, which is fine. Totally makes sense that he'd be upset. What doesn't feel so natural to me is that his reaction is so extreme that it leads to him invoking Peter's father's words of wisdom about responsibility, which is, of course, this film's version of that famous quote. Now, before this section, there's been a sort of silence surrounding Peter's parents, the sense that Ben and May would rather not talk about it too much for some reason. So it feels pretty strange when Ben invokes these words here for what, to me, feels like a relatively minor misstep. Like, I would expect Ben to whip out these words if he found out that Peter had done something truly awful, not when he simply forgot something. It also doesn't help that we as the audience know that Peter was actually trying to do a good thing here by helping Connors. You know, aiding him in his research that could save plenty of people and even grow back Connors' own arm. Because of this, there's this obvious miscommunication looming over the conversation. This feeling that if Ben would just calm down for a second, maybe Peter could explain. But no, Ben's angry because we need to get to that responsibility line now. This is made so much worse when Peter, understandably, gets upset that Ben threw his father's words at him, and Ben strikes with, "Oh, come on, how dare you?" I don't know, Ben. I think I'm on Peter's side here. This seems like a big overreaction, and in my opinion, all of this means that the film has absolutely butchered this pivotal scene. But then we move to a far worse moment where Peter, after storming out of the house, goes to a convenience store, but doesn't have enough money to buy his chocolate milk. The store clerk tells him he can't buy it. So, because Peter is annoyed, he turns the other way when the guy behind him robs the clerk, and whoa, he even tosses Pete the milk. What a bro. Anyway, then he leaves. The store clerk asks Peter for help. Of course, Peter doesn't. But, oh no, Uncle Ben, he's across the street. He sees the guy drop the gun, so he tries to grab it, and in the struggle, he's shot, and oh wow, Ben is dead. Why? What did he die for? Well, he died for chocolate milk. Now, this might sound a little facetious, like I'm phrasing it stupidly so it sounds dumber than it is, but this is really what this moment comes down to for me. Whenever I watch it, I can't help but think that Uncle Ben just died for chocolate milk. However, the film could still make this work. Maybe we could focus on Peter grappling with his feelings of guilt after such a small moment led to this. Like maybe later, Peter could have a conversation with Gwen, and he could grieve not only over the fact that Ben is dead, but also that he died for something so meaningless. But no, we never do that. Instead, this moment is brushed under the rug, and we move along. Now, I don't want to act like Raimi's films are the only good way to do things. They aren't. But still, it's impossible for me to watch this without directly comparing it to that version. That version was so much better. The thing Peter had stolen from him, the $3,000 he had rightfully earned, it clearly meant something to him. and so it made total sense why he let the thief leave after the fact. In fact, it seemed reasonable to do so. Why would he help this guy who just cheated him? However, once that guy killed Uncle Ben, his mistake became clear. This was about it being irresponsible to let a man with a gun just run off after threatening people. This was about the very thing his uncle had told him to consider: power and responsibility. And that versus chocolate milk? Well, things aren't looking so good for Peter's chocolate milk, I'll say that much. Still, if this whole Uncle Ben's death thing was just one major misstep, I could see the movie being enjoyable. Sure, it would still be marred by this moment, but hey, I can look past some mistakes. There are even a couple scenes I enjoy after this too, like Peter building his Spider-Man stuff and Flash saying he's sorry about Peter's uncle. But unfortunately, I don't think the film ever fully recovers. Nah, this whole thing with Ben just revealed how the rest of this movie is going to play out, and the bizarre ways it will push the plot forward in unsatisfying directions. The first of these unsatisfying plots I really hate: Peter's quest for revenge. See, Peter's primary motivation for becoming Spider-Man in this film is that he wants to avenge Uncle Ben's death. Helping people and catching criminals is clearly secondary to that, since he's only going after people who could match Ben's killer's description. This is another one of those things that some people don't like. My Spider-Man isn't a revenge man, you know, that sort of thing. But once again, I don't really care. I understand why the Spider-Man wants revenge, and I believe that he would go out and try to get it. But here's the problem. The plot line never reaches a proper conclusion. It just gets dropped. That's right. This Spider-Man's main reason for becoming Spider-Man and his desire to do something about Ben's killer just vanishes as other things become more important to the plot. Now, there is an implicit reason given for this, though. After all, when he has dinner with Gwen's family, he and her dad talk about how Spider-Man's been actually messing things up for the police. By the end, there's this sense that Peter realizes that he's been doing this for the wrong reasons. But this is a pretty small moment, and little focus is placed on him outright abandoning his goal at this point. To me, this is just a case where it feels like the film didn't consider its own plot. What I mean is that, sure, I guess Spider-Man shouldn't be focused on revenge, but after we've placed this much emphasis on it, I want to see an actual conclusion to this arc. Something that feels definitive and emotional. Like, imagine how much more satisfying it would be for Peter to capture the killer, get ready to harm them or even kill them, but then he recalls Ben's words and realizes that this would be wrong. That way he could take him to the police because, yes, it's still not okay for this guy to just be out and about. He's still a dangerous murderer. So yeah, it feels like the movie just forgot about this, and as such, one of its most major plot points never reaches a remotely satisfying conclusion. But the main thing that sidelines this plot? Well, that's the lizard, which Dr. Connors turns into after getting backed into a corner by his Oscorp overlords and using his serum on himself. And once he realizes that this formula definitely isn't ready for human testing because, you know, he's turning into a lizard, well, he rushes out to stop this Oscorp guy that was ready to begin some illegal human trials. However, Spider-Man saves him, along with the other people the lizard attacks on the bridge. And what happens with Mr. Human Trials following this? Nothing. He vanishes. I feel like I'm starting to notice a pattern here. Then, instead of the lizard's motivation centering around stopping Oscorp from misusing his research, he decides that he wants to turn everyone to lizards because it's good for them or something. He's going crazy, I guess. It's like he has a second side of his brain that's telling him that he needs to get this done and that this is what's best for the world. There's this sort of focus on perfection from him, like turning into a lizard will make other people more whole and help them. This is a bit of a strange change in trajectory for his character, but I could see it working. Connors does want his arm back after all, and seems to view himself as incomplete without it. So this definition of completeness that he has in mind, maybe that could lead him down some strange paths as his mental state deteriorates. In fact, I think that's what the movie's going for, but my issue is that we don't focus on that nearly enough. There are really just a couple shots where we see longing from him about his arm, a couple times where it gets mentioned. Other than that, not so much. And really, that goes for him in general. I haven't seen much of him. All I can say about this version of Connors is that he seems like a good guy who wants to use his research to help people. I haven't seen anything about him to make me personally care about this guy or his possibly tragic fate. It's all too surface level. There are other questions that rise to the surface surrounding him too. For example, how is Oscorp reacting to this? While they don't know Connors is the lizard, they should still do something when they see that this rat is a big boy. or when they learned that one of their own was randomly attacked by a giant lizard. Obviously, this would be a bit tangential to the film's plot as it exists now, but that's exactly the problem. The film is all too quick to ignore concepts it's already set up in favor of doing something different that it wanted to do. As such, this plot isn't snowballing, isn't naturally developing and becoming more intense. It's more like random ideas are getting tossed into the mix. Like we have a revenge plot, then the Oscorp guy, then Oscorp's general reaction. And all of it is written out because eventually it's revealed that this wasn't the story we were actually telling. It leads to an exceptionally directionless movie. Beyond all of this, though, there's the lizard's connection to Peter. You know, how he functions as a meaningful villain for our hero. What he represents to Peter, what he means for the movie. Ideally, there would be a personal connection between them, and yes, there actually is. After all, Peter gave him the formula that made this possible, so now he feels responsible. Alright, so we're coming back to that responsibility thing from Ben now, cool. However, unfortunately, this connection wasn't nearly enough for me. Don't get me wrong, it's a good start, but my issue is that, in my mind, Peter isn't really to blame for this, or at least not enough if this is going to be the primary way they connect. The real guy who caused this is the Oscorp human testing dude who got ridden out of the movie. Now, that's not to say I'm blaming Peter for feeling responsible. I know I would if I were in his shoes, but we as the audience have more information than him. As such, I know what really happened, and I know that Peter isn't as responsible as he thinks he is. This way, the emotions behind Peter's decisions, behind his drive to help people and save the city, they don't feel all that strong to me. Whatever. Why do I even care anymore? The lizard is such a nothing villain to me. But we still have Peter himself. How's his characterization and arc throughout the film? Well, we've already established that his revenge got sidelined and that I didn't find his relationship with the lizard compelling, so that's not good. However, there is more to his character. For example, he has this nice scene where he rescues this kid, and that comes back later when the crane operators help him. Personally, I found this part a bit cloying and on the nose, but if you found it powerful, fair enough. Otherwise, the main elements of his character revolve around his relationship with Gwen. Now, this romance starts off strong. They have a lot of chemistry and cute banter together, and it was just really easy to get invested in them as a pair. But honestly, I'm not really a fan of where it goes. See, after Peter gets in an argument with Gwen's father at a family dinner, he reveals to her that he's Spider-Man. In the end then, he and her father work together, but he's injured, and in his last breaths, he makes Peter promise to leave his daughter alone because he'll make too many enemies and she'll be in danger. And sure enough, Peter distances himself from Gwen. However, she's still able to figure out that her father made him promise this, and she hates the idea that she can't be with Peter because of her father. It shouldn't be his choice. Fair enough, I'm still with you. But then Aunt May assures Peter that he is good and that he should be able to have a relationship with her, and finally, he listens to the voicemail Uncle Ben left for him. The voicemail itself, I don't like it. The voiceover for it is incredibly dry and stilted, and the words feel real weird given that Ben didn't know Peter was Spider-Man. Like the way he's talking, the words he's choosing, they feel totally out of place for where Ben was in the story. Once again, it seems like the characters are more so saying things that fall in line with the typical movie moment, rather than actually being their own characters and being genuine. Whatever though, the moment I truly hate comes here, when Peter arrives late to class and promises it won't happen again. The teacher tells him he shouldn't make promises he can't keep. Peter, now sitting behind Gwen, leans forward and whispers to her,
"Yeah, but those are the best kind."
What? Peter! That's messed up! Now, I'm not inherently opposed to him disregarding this promise to Gwen's dad and deciding to be with her. At the end of the day, this can be his and Gwen's decision. But saying it like this, it's just so cruel, like he's spitting on her father's grave. Then the music soars as he swings through the city after saying this, as though this was his big hero moment. But it's not. What does this have to do with responsibility and with the other words from Uncle Ben that we just heard? Frankly, I don't know what this movie is about anymore, and that's exactly the problem. At times, it can be so on the nose with its themes and lessons, and yet, at the end of the day, I don't think it really has anything to consistently say, which could be fine if I found other elements of the film satisfying, but I don't. From Ben's crappy death, to drop plot points, to a villain I don't care about, to Peter doing this, I think all of it is amazingly bad. And this is easily my least favorite Spider-Man movie I've had to watch thus far. But you know what? Maybe the next movie will have more of what I'm looking for. I doubt it, considering how most people talk about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but whatever. I'll try to keep an open mind. So, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you for the next video, folks. Bye-bye for now.